This is my first time writing a story, so I'll write my experience as clearly as possible. I was 16 years old and already at boarding school for roughly 5 years. My boarding school was situated in buildings that were originally used as a convent for priests and was also used as a graveyard in the Middle Ages. It has now been around for over 170 years as a school, going through 2 world wars, during which it was also used as a field hospital by the German army. Now, the thing you should know about the boarding school is that it was located in 2 large buildings, separated by a large playground. The boarding school itself was located on the top floor of each building, separated by 3 floors to reach the ground floor. I didn't have good grades that year and was moved over to the other building of the boarding school with the junior years to be under a stricter routine and longer study hours. We always had about 1 hour and 15 minutes every evening to relax and spend time with friends after studying. For that, there was a large basement with a small TV room with a bar and a gigantic room with pool tables and kicker tables. The thing about the gigantic room was that it only had a single light switch, and it was connected to the school's theatre and dancing room, of which the doors were always locked and its light always closed. Besides that, there was also a door that was always locked and supposedly connected the 2 buildings on the school's premises with a tunnel. Now that evening, I went down to the basement directly after studying, taking along my phone charger. It was a pretty uneventful night, and at the end of it, I went up the stairs, going up 3 floors, finally reached my room. All of a sudden, I realized that I forgot my charger in the basement and ran up to the supervisor, who gave me the keys so I could go down to the basement. Once I was descending the 3 floors to reach the basement, I started to get this eerie feeling of being watched. The feeling got even worse once I realized that if I screamed, nobody would hear me, as there were 3 empty floors between myself and the boarding school. Once I reached the basement level, I was calm again, unlocking the first door and opening the second one. As I slowly opened the second door, it felt as if the darkness in the gigantic room was extremely thick, as if it would swallow me. I know it sounds weird, but that's how it felt. I switched on the lights and started making my way past the ping-pong tables towards the back of the gigantic room, roughly 30 meters away from the door and the only light switch. As I made my way to the back, I was suddenly taken over by a massive sense of danger and terror. I felt as if I was being ambushed or led into a trap, and my heart rate skyrocketed. I quickly turned around and speed walked back to the door, when suddenly all the ping-pong tables were making extremely loud noises, as if people were slamming on them with their fists to stir up a fight. I started sprinting to the door in fear that someone might switch off the lights or close the door on me, and while I was getting closer to the door, the noise got louder and louder. Once I finally reached it, I switched off the light and slammed the door shut, and as soon as the door closed, the noise stopped. I quickly locked the door and ran up as fast as I could, as if my life depended on it. No pun intended, crashing into one of the supervisors making his way home at the end of the night. He asked me what was going on, as I was pale, sweaty, and shaking, and I told him what I experienced. Instead of trying to rationalize what happened, the first thing he said is that he experienced some scary things as well when he had to lock up the basement alone. He also told me to check with another supervisor to make sure nobody was down there. The other supervisor and I went down the basement again and stopped at the locked door, trying to hear if someone was down there or if any student was messing around. We listened quietly and heard someone walking around. As soon as we opened the door, the noise stopped and we opened the lights, but nobody was there. Nevertheless, the back doors of the dancing room and theater were wide open. To this day, I get chills thinking back on this experience. Nobody could have been down there with me, without me noticing it, nor can I explain away the slamming noises coming from the pool tables. It's an experience that has never left me, and although I try to rationalize it, it is haunting me in a way. What could it have been is what I am wondering now. Please show your support by subscribe to our YouTube channel and like the video. This really helps us a lot. I upload daily horror stories, so make sure to press the bell icon. Hi everyone. I'd like to share an experience I've had about a particular place. This is a true story. I'm curious if anyone on this board has also been here before it was demolished and has had similar experiences. To start, I visited the abandoned Belchertown State School in Massachusetts twice. Once in the summer of 2015 and another time in the winter of 2016. I was with one friend the first time and two the second time. For privacy's sake, I'm going to call my first friend M and the second J. It was the first major abandoned complex I'd ever been in. Initial impressions of the campus were exceedingly creepy, and that the physical state of the buildings was visually disturbing. That was to be expected, but then things got weird. I'm not someone who inherently leans toward paranormal explanations, and I consider myself to be a person of sound logic. But there were feelings associated with Belchertown that have forever stuck with me and my friends. These things that have certainly affected my life over the last few years. The first of which occurred in a dormitory, the first building I went into with M in 2015. The door was open, so we trekked through the brush and made our way into the building. Inside was pitch dark in the middle of the afternoon. As soon as we stepped in, we heard the flutter of dozens of bats above us, which was quite a frightening experience at the time. At one point, I was standing in front of the main doorway taking photos, and M told me he saw something walk in front of it from the outside, intercepting the sunlight. Naturally, I assumed this was an animal, albeit completely silent. That is until M told me it looked like the black silhouette of a person walking swiftly right in front of the entrance. I figured he was being paranoid, but needless to say, we left that building pretty fast. The next instance happened in what I'm going to call the epicenter. Something was wrong with the whole campus, but something was very seriously wrong with the auditorium building, specifically the basement. We approached it from the side, walking up to a kicked-out basement window. I attempted to take some photos on my phone of the exterior window. Every photo I took pointed in this direction, showed up in my camera roll as a completely black image. No information, just black. This happened several times. At this same point, M, who was using an early 1990s Canon SLR film camera, was not able to take a photo. His focus hunted and did not work, even on manual. Then the camera refused to shutter. Now, we were getting a little bit spooked. Suddenly, a freezer-level burst of cold air came rushing out of the buildings and stood the hair on our bodies right up. We left the area because the feeling was so uncomfortable. Later, we ended up in that very basement of the auditorium. But it wasn't until our second trip that things started to get more disturbing. I was in that basement with M and J when Jay walked into a pitch-dark basketball court with his flashlight and froze in his tracks. He stopped his sentence short, then slowly backed out of the room and would not tell us what was the matter. We brushed it off, but it wouldn't be until later when he told us what happened. He explained that he believed to have seen a black figure crouching in the far corner of the basketball court, up on these decaying wooden walkways. He said the figure stood upright, then stretched into the darkness faster than a person could, as though it stood up and stretched into the black at the same time. Anyway, we spent some more time in that basement before we truly got the feeling. The terrible, terrible feeling. It was a feeling that something was there. I'm always afraid to say this part, due to people judging my credibility, but I am sure it was not human. We all are. I say this in the sense that we all had the feeling that we were being watched or hunted by something very evil. You couldn't see or hear it, but you could feel it like a weight that wanted to drive you insane. Now I know a lot of terrible things happened at Belchertown, and I've been to a lot of creepy places since, but this takes the cake. As the sun began to go down that day, we all felt that feeling amplify. It embodied the whole campus, and it felt very hostile. Driving back that day was the first time I realized the feeling was back, that it had, in some way, shape or form, followed me. In the weeks following, I experienced the feeling on and off. In the months following, I went through one of the hardest periods of my life. Whether or not it was related to that place, I can't say. But at times, it felt as though I was barely holding on to my sanity, just like whatever was in that basement wanted for me. My friends all reported similar emotional problems around this time. We later decided to unofficially establish that there was a disturbance from that place, which had followed us all in different ways. Over the next few years, we'd meet others who engaged in urban exploration, and some who had also been to Belchertown. They all confirmed the same thing. Something was up with that auditorium basement. Anyway, if anyone on here has similar experiences from this place, I love to hear them. As of 2019, Belchertown has been almost entirely demolished. If I had to say so myself, it's for the better.